Recording in progress.
Good morning and welcome to the Yuba Water Agency Board of Directors meeting for Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Director Vasquez?
Here.
Director Hasty? Director Bradford?
Here.
Director Fuhrer? Absent. Director Blazer?
Here.
Director Fletcher?
Here.
And Director Matthews will be attending via Zoom, but not participating.
Great, thank you. Director Blazer, will you lead us in the pledge, please?
Stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next is public comment. Can you read that for us, please, Mandy?
Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to address the Board of Directors on any subject matter that is not on the meeting agenda and is within the board's subject matter jurisdiction. Public comment periods are limited to 3 minutes per person, and the total amount of time for public comment is 15 minutes. Persons participating by way of video conference or teleconference shall ensure their audio is muted at all times except when the board chair announces public comment periods. At those designated times, members of the public wishing to speak shall enable their audio and state their name for the record. When multiple members of the public wish to speak, the clerk will determine the order of speakers and announce their names accordingly. To ensure proper conduct, the board reserves the right to mute audio and video of any member of the public violating generally accepted principles and decorum of official public meetings.
Great, thank you. Is there any public comment? I don't see any in the room, and I do not see any hands raised on Zoom. Oh, that's just the mouse. Yeah, it's the mouse. So, Director Matthews, I did want to let you know, I see that you're on. We've been advised that if you wish to speak during board and directors comment period, that would be more appropriate for you to do it now during public comment. So I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to share.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so seeing no public comment, we'll move on to consent items.
Motion to.
Second. Okay, I have a first from Director Fletcher and a second from Director Hasty. Any public comment on the consent agenda?
My name is Kathy LeBlanc. I'm the Executive Director of Camptonville Community Partnership. I'm glad to be before you today. I didn't know if you had any questions or anything for me.
Thank you for coming today. Are there questions or comments?
So the comment, great project and a lot of support from this end. As you continue down that path, there's still some doors that need to be opened, but you're doing a great job, Kathy. Keep it up. And this is our small piece that helps as we move forward.
It helps us a lot. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Any additional comment or questions from the public or the board on the consent agenda? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Great, thank you. Next, we will move on to discussion items, starting with item 6, review of the 2022 California legislative session. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Chair Bradford and directors. Give me just one moment here. I'll pull some slides up. All right, well, good morning again, directors. Adam Robin, Government Relations Manager with the agency. As you all know, this agency engages the state and federal governments in a variety of ways for a variety of purposes, from partnering with resource agencies on habitat restoration project and our forest health efforts, to engaging with our regulators in a wide variety of settings, and of course, interacting with our state legislature in Sacramento and with Congress back in Washington, D.C. Today, we'll be focused on providing you with an update on the 2022 state legislative session that concluded just a few weeks ago. So, the legislature finished their business at the end of August. The governor had until the end of September to take action on enrolled measures presented to him for his signature. So this update is timely. Through our work with the state legislature in 2022, we worked to advance Yuba Water Agency's priorities by pursuing funding opportunities. We also identified and worked to address potentially problematic policy proposals. We're also always looking for ways to help tell the story of the agency. Working with Dee Dee and the communications team, we want to ensure that folks in Sacramento are aware of all the work that this agency is doing. Work that in so many cases aligns with policy priorities back in DC as well as in Sacramento, whether it's forest health work, fish habitat restoration work, advancing sustainable groundwater management, or doing what we can to contribute to the reliability of the state's energy grid. Communicating the good work of this agency is something that we're always looking to do. So here's a brief overview of how I'll be spending the next few minutes. There's a fair amount of content to cover here, so please, if you have thoughts or questions as I move through this, we're covering a broad scope of issues, so feel free to jump in at any point if you have thoughts or questions. We'll be talking first about policy bills. Those are bills that work through the regular state legislative policy committee process. We'll also be talking about the state budget, which this year and in the past several years has been a source of significant attention down in Sacramento. And then finally, we'll look ahead a little bit to 2023 and what might come next. So in total of those policy bills, these are the bills that move through the policy committee, over 2,100 measures were introduced this year. Of those 2,100, over 2,000 bills, we actively tracked 106 measures. I'm not going to be talking about each and every one of those bills today. Instead, we'll just be focusing on some of the more significant highlights. These are issues that we worked on and things that might have your attention for other reasons as well. I want to start off with water and flood bills. The first of these is AB 2201, which was authored by Assemblyman Steve Bennett from Ventura County. This is a groundwater bill, and it would have required a county to forward permit requests for the construction of new wells or the modification of existing wells to a groundwater sustainability agency to obtain written verification that the proposed changes to the well or the addition of a new well is consistent with the requirements of the assumptions basically underlying a groundwater sustainability plan. So this bill only applies in Sigma basins. Additionally, significantly, it would have required that the permit be posted for 30 days before any action could be taken. Now, the author was motivated by concerns that we were hearing from many parts of the state, particularly where there are critically overdrafted basins, that there's a race to the bottom type of dynamic. The bill, however, was strongly opposed by local government, agriculture, and water interests for, frankly, imposing new requirements sort of midstream in the Sigma development and implementation process for many agencies. For our part, we had specific concerns that the 30-day notice provision in the bill would have prevented groundwater managers in Yuba Water Agency from being able to respond to conditions in real time through third-party impact action plans that are part of conjunctive use agreements, as well as other existing arrangements. Yuba County groundwater managers don't wait 30 days to solve problems in many cases. Turnarounds are more immediate when it comes to remediating impacts that might be associated with active management of our groundwater basins, conjunctive use practices, and the like. So we engaged with constructive conversations with the author's office early on with this bill. I'm pleased to say that they ultimately recognized our concerns as legitimate and were willing to incorporate them into the bill. That said, as I noted earlier, the bill was opposed fairly broadly, and the bill was parked on the last day of session. That said, this bill won't be going away. We fully expect to see the author reintroduce something similar next year, and we're hopeful that our constructive engagement with the author's office early and often will yield dividends as we move into next year. This issue will be coming back. We'll almost certainly be talking about it at future meetings. Moving on, at SB 1253, the California Infrastructure Plan is a plan that the governor submits every year to the legislature that details the types of infrastructure investments and needs state agencies have looking 5 years out. Historically, an analysis of the state plan of flood control, that's the flood risk reduction infrastructure along the Central Valley, hasn't been part of that plan. So the California Central Valley Flood Control Association sponsored SB 1253 this year, which requires the administration to include potential additions to operations and maintenance of the state plan of flood control in this annual update to the legislature on the state's infrastructure needs. This bill was ultimately signed by the governor. Moving on to energy. There was significant action here, particularly towards the end of session. Governor Newsom introduced a sweeping set of 6 climate change proposals and energy proposals, 5 of which were ultimately enacted into law. They include a new law that establishes a goal of economy-wide net zero carbon emissions by 2045, a framework for carbon capture and storage, a process to develop a framework for storing carbon in natural and working lands that'll be incorporated into the existing AB 32 GHG reduction framework, a new setback requirement on oil wells near certain types of development, as well as new clean energy planning targets of 90% by 2035, 95% by 2040, ultimately ramping up toward the state's existing goal of 100% clean energy by 2045. It also includes a directive for state agencies to obtain 100% clean energy by 2035. At the highest level, all of these bills build on the existing SB 100 framework, where our large hydroelectric resources are classified as firm zero carbon. So while none of these bills really change the fundamental landscape in which we're operating or directly implicate our operations or the opportunities in front of the agencies, it's definitely a big part of that landscape, which we're continuously working to navigate. One other note here on energy, you all may be aware that also at the end of session, the legislature and the administration agreed on providing a $1.4 billion forgivable loan to PG&E to continue operations at the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant through 2030. That was something that also attracted a lot of attention, not something that directly affects the agency's interests, but it's certainly something that we want to keep track of as part of broader energy developments in Sacramento. Moving on, forest health. AB 1717 is a bill that would have applied prevailing wage requirements to fuel reduction work performed as part of a fire mitigation project that's paid for in whole or in part out of state funds. This would be a significant change in the labor market related to forestry type issues. We met with the author's office on this bill and the bill sponsors early on to describe the agency's forest health efforts and to discuss the potential impacts of the bill on that work. The bill was, as the session moved on, ultimately opposed by groups including RCRC, Cal Forests, and Mountain Counties Water Resources Association. The bill easily passed through both houses of the legislature, but it was ultimately vetoed by the governor. And in his veto message, he said, in part, "I am concerned that adding these projects to the definition of public works would introduce delays to critical fire mitigation projects necessary to protect vulnerable communities." He directed his administration to work with the legislature and the sponsors of the bill to further examine the issues and propose solutions to, quote, "ensure that we are both paying this critical workforce fairly while not unduly delaying these projects that protect people's lives and livelihoods." Like AB 2201, this is not a bill that became law or will become law on January 1st when bills take effect. It is, however, something that we fully expect that the legislature will be revisiting in future years, and seeing how, when, and to what extent the administration engages on developing a framework around this issue is something we'll be watching very closely. The final policy bill update here relates to a local government issue and a Brown Act issue. This is AB 2449. Some of you may be familiar with this bill. It was ultimately enacted by the governor. Quick description of the bill is that it establishes a new avenue for members of a Brown Act board to meet remotely without noticing or providing public access to the remote meeting location, subject to specific requirements which differ based on whether the remote participation arises out of a just cause or emergency circumstances. Those are defined fairly specifically under the bill. So this is out there in terms of a new avenue for remote participation for Brown Act bodies like the agency. That's it on policy bills. I'd like to move on now to the state budget. This was a record budget, and the headline numbers are pretty incredible, frankly. The state budget was over $300 billion this year. That was a record. That was in many ways that was made possible by a record general fund surplus. While these numbers swing pretty wildly as the budget takes shape, we heard anywhere from $100 million surplus to a $50 billion surplus. These are the numbers that came out of the legislative analyst's office most recently. Significant federal funding was also a component in making this year's record budget possible. So I guess while I won't dive into all of the $300 billion and how that pie was sliced up, there are a few relevant pieces that I'd like to call out for the board today. The first is that there's significant funding made available in this year's state budget to state agencies for fish and wildlife habitat enhancement projects. That includes $122 million to DWR for multi-benefit projects that support aquatic habitat and drought resilience. $100 million to CDFW to, quote, protect salmon, a fairly open-ended allocation. The budget line item in the budget literally says $100 million to protect salmon, as well as funding for staff positions that are specifically dedicated to the completion and implementation of voluntary agreements. These are the types of appropriations that will have a long tail in the work that we do with our regulatory agencies. It's not easy to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on resource projects. Ensuring that we're keeping track of how that funding is ultimately encumbered by state agencies and working to maximize opportunities for the agency is something that we'll be working very deliberately toward over the next several years. Want to briefly mention forest health here as well. In addition to the significant funding that's been appropriated over the several last budget cycles, this year's budget extended a CEQA exemption for forest health, thinning, and fuel reduction projects. That's significant because, as we know, environmental permitting can be a key hurdle for those types of projects to overcome. So we were glad to see that this year's budget extended that CEQA exemption near the end of session. Finally, on flood risk reduction, a few pieces to mention here. Back in January, this board elected to co-sponsor AB 2078, which was a bill by Assemblyman Heath Flora that would have made, frankly, some fairly modest tweaks to the Department of Water Resources Atmospheric River Research Program and the legislation that authorizes that program. While it was a modest bill, it served an important purpose, which was to gain legislative attention to and support for the important work that that program is doing. It was always envisioned that that bill would be kind of a landing place for broader conversations about this issue in the state capitol. That bill was ultimately parked in the Appropriations Committee in the first house. It did not proceed. You heard that update at your June meeting. But that was right around the same time that the administration released their May revised proposal, which allocated $10 million to forecast informed reservoir operations work and atmospheric river research in the budget. That amount actually grew by the end of session, where we saw almost $17 million appropriated this year, and more significantly, ongoing to that work, which supports not only the state's atmospheric river research program, but also forecast informed reservoir operations work, as well as the snow surveys. This agency has really been pioneering the use of and practices underlying some of that work. So it's very exciting to see the state step up and commit significant ongoing resources to that type of work. Finally, last but certainly not least, I want to talk a little bit about state funding for dam safety and climate resilience projects. This is a potential state funding source for projects like the Arc Spillway. This has been a significant, sustained effort on the part of staff and our consultants over several years. We've been helping to coordinate a statewide coalition. Some of the highlights from this year really include the fact that in addition to water agencies and local government, our coalition now includes statewide associations, as well as significantly labor and construction interests that have all coalesced around the idea that these are the types of investments the state should be making, reinvesting in existing infrastructure to make sure that it can do its job now and into the future. We were also pleased to get legislative support in the form of a budget request letter that was signed by 29 legislators from across the state, Democrats, Republicans, senators, assembly members, everybody from the most progressive liberal members of the state assembly to the most conservative Republicans in the state Senate. I think that the scope of that effort really speaks to the fact that all parts of the state have need for this source of funding. Ultimately, we were pleased that the legislature and the administration put markers down for the next budget year. At this point, we're expecting to see $75 million appropriated to the program in next year's budget. But the devil, in this case, is definitely in the details. ensuring that that money is actually appropriated in next year's budget is something that we're going to be working very deliberately toward over the next several months. So this is my last slide here. You know, that's a brief overview of where we've been in 2022. A lot of those issues are going to bleed over directly into 2023. So a few things to keep in mind as we move into next year. The first, you know, statewide election and legislative turnover. All of our state constitutional officers are on the ballot in November. Additionally, and significantly in the legislature, due to a combination of turnover, term limits, and retirements, almost 1 in 3 members of the state assembly will be new next year. 1 in 4 senators will be new next year. So in many ways, we'll be dealing with a brand new legislature. You know, Director Hasty in his director's comments back in June observed that, you know, we have our work cut out for us. We have to explain the work of the agency and how we fit into statewide issues to, in many ways, a brand new audience over there. So that's something that we're already preparing for and will absolutely be sort of informing a lot of the work that happens in Sacramento. Additionally, the state budget. You know, we talked a little bit about how this year's state budget set so many records in so many ways. While we can only guess what the state budget will look like in 2023, I think it's safe to assume at this point that record surpluses won't continue into those out years. In fact, the Department of Finance's initial projections and the receipts that they've actually received for the period of July through September shows receipts coming in significantly below forecasts to the tune of about $4.5 billion. So while, you know, that's not a huge number in the context of $300 billion budget, it'll be interesting, and we'll be watching closely to see how those trends continue. And it'll definitely shape sort of the scale of opportunities that might be available through the budget. Finally, the last item here is drought, flood, and fire. You know, what commands the legislature attention will be conditions on the ground. If we see drought conditions persist into 2023, we'll almost certainly see significant water policy proposals that are you know, presented for the legislature's consideration. We're already seeing a few things go kind of being out there and playing out there in the press and in various reports and the like that may present concerns for the agency. It's something that we're watching very closely along with our partners around the state. So that's my final slide here. I will say that we will plan on being back before you in early 2023. You may recall that we periodically I'm periodically joining these updates with our state and federal consultants so that you're hearing directly from them about the work that they're doing on the agency's behalf in Washington, D.C. and in Sacramento. As I said earlier, there's going to be some significant changes, certainly in Sacramento, potentially in Washington, D.C., that we'll want to make sure we're all up to speed on as we prepare to continue our work next year. That's my update today. I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any thoughts from you all. Thank you.
Through the chair, with the budget surplus and his mechanism for getting money back for the gas tax, why doesn't he just eliminate the gas tax and save us all a lot of money and a lot of paperwork, and also recognize big hydro, and he will achieve his goals overnight?
Through the chair, Adam, I just want to thank you. I mean, it has been, since you've been here, you've just done an outstanding job. I think this is one of the best reports I've seen from a ledge person come up. It's concise, hits all the things we need to hit. I think my biggest concern is if next year is a drought, some of the water policy stuff could be incredibly ugly. And we're seeing things happen that partnerships are surprising each other with usually bad news. And I do want to say that one of the things that I appreciate the most about our partnership with Circle is when they're going to do something to us, they call us up and say, we're going to have to sue you. And I'm okay with that. I want my partners to be able to tell me what's going on and what they have to do, because I can understand that. But I don't want to see it in the press. And that's kind of what happened this week at NACWA. And so I guess I just want to say, those are the things that concern me long term. It's more about one more year of drought is going to change policy. And the failure of Colorado, if that doesn't get better, then there's going to be a lot of changes throughout the Western United States, and we will not be unattached to those. And so I just want to thank you for your work. You're doing outstanding work. I appreciate you managing the team. You just do a great job, and I appreciate you're here with the agency.
Yeah, I forgot to thank you for all the effort that you've done, and refreshing to hear all these bills that they're putting through and budget surpluses that they have.
through the chair. I absolutely agree with Brent. Thank you for the presentation. Great information. I hope you come back in the spring, bring some more information, keep the board informed. Other than the piece about being sued, no, I don't like being sued, and I hope they don't sue us. And I think there's a better way around lawsuits than lawsuits. You communicate better, and maybe we can eliminate some of those. You know, I think our partnerships are huge. That we stay in touch with those, whether it's Aqua, Naqua, mountain counties, they are a critical piece. We have so much more power and clout if we work together to resolve issues rather than suing one another, and particularly the state of California. I hope they pay attention to that. Makes a lot more sense to me. So again, great presentation, and look forward to the future.
Go ahead, Willie.
Sure. Yeah. Quick add-on to Adam's presentation. Adam, when we hired Adam, it was in the middle of COVID. You know, it was almost 2 years ago, and we talked about having office space and have him have a significant presence in Sacramento. And as he noted in his presentation, there's going to be a major challenge in bringing new legislators up to speed on what we do. That, coupled with what Brent just mentioned about partnerships and communicating with our partners, I asked Adam to look for office space in Sacramento. And Adam, if you could just give a brief update on where you're at with that and what your plans are moving forward. That's all.
Yeah, sure. So as of earlier this month, we executed a sublease on a one-room office space in Sacramento. It's sort of a landing place for staff in Sacramento. I work there. That's sort of my primary place of work now. Importantly, it does provide access to conference rooms for agency personnel in the event that we have meetings in Sacramento. It's in the Senator Hotel space so it's right across the street from the Capitol. It's a sublease that was executed with the California Manufacturers and Technology Association, which is a trade association. Half of their office space is dedicated to their staff. The other half are professional offices, of which we are now the proud lessor of one space. So that is available in Sacramento now for staff and agency personnel.
Great. That's a great building. Perfect site.
That's a great idea. And thank you for your update today, Adam. It was very timely and very well done, and I appreciate all you do for the agency. So thank you. We're very lucky to have you. So thank you. One follow-up on this question actually for legal counsel. Maybe first meeting in January, we could get an update on the changes to the Brown Act. I know there's some very specific requirements and specifications around when board members can participate remotely and under what circumstances and how many times a year. And it's fairly complicated. So if we could get an update on that, maybe beginning of the year when it takes effect, that would be appreciated.
In December, so we'll actually provide a written guide for AB 2449. Also, AB 1100 is another bill that we should be paying a little bit of attention to. Hopefully, you'll never have to use it, but it does provide more guidance than the Brown Act currently does on when meetings are disrupted, process for dealing with those disruptions, and what you can do, what you can't do. So it's at least important to know how that works as well. And then happy in January when we have the first meeting to answer any questions that any directors may have as a result of the written report.
Okay, thank you. So is there any, before we move on to the next item, any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Adam. We'll move on to item 7, consider amendments to the current loan agreements for the City of Wheatland for an additional $2.6 million and OPUD for up to an additional $1.55 million to provide additional funds for the completion of a unified grant application to the state for construction funds for South County Regional Wastewater Water Infrastructure Project. So, and I see that it was recommended for approval by the pod. So, morning, Terry.
Good morning. Thank you. Yes, it was recommended for approval on October 4th by the pod committee. I asked for the item to be on discussion items instead of consent. And as did the pod committee. A couple of details have changed, and also it's a big request. And frankly, I just wanted to give you an update on the project because it's pretty exciting what's going on. So the project really started back in 2020. You know, I'm absolutely wrong on that. The project actually started, I don't know, 25 years ago.
Decades ago.
Yeah, decades ago, when all the county leaders realized, okay, we are never going to fulfill the general plan of the county with industrial and commercial and the sports and entertainment zone until we have water and wastewater infrastructure to the south of the county. And time again, there were efforts to get something going, and we could just never, the global we here, could never really get anything going until late in 2019. We had a meeting with Director Hasty and Director Lofton at the time, and we were talking about how important this infrastructure was. And Director Hasty and Lofton made it clear that we need to get this done. And so here we are. Getting it done is a regional wastewater system in the south of the county that eventually will be a regional system that would serve Wheatland, Olivehurst, OPUD, Linda County Water, and of course, Linda County Water serves Marysville. So that's probably going to take 25 years or so to actually have this whole regional system. So we're starting with the first phase of this system, which is Wheatland connected with OPUD. So this part of the project started last year in earnest, not last year, 2020 in earnest, when you, our board, granted $7.3 million to Wheatland and Olivehurst Public Utility District, half in loan and half in grant, to do the design and engineering on their portions of this first part of the regional system. And so since then, Wheatland and OPUD have been working to develop their systems. Yuba-Water has continued to coordinate the project and make sure that both entities had what they needed to make progress on the project. And now design and engineering is complete. Well, complete individually, you know, for Wheatland and for OPUD, including making sure that both Wheatland and OPUD had grant applications in for the state revolving fund with the State Water Resources Control Board, which of course in the past never granted more than $10 million for a project like this. So we started looking for money. Well, earlier this year, the state called both Wheatland and OPUD and said, we're really interested in this project because we have a new program now designed to serve regional projects in disadvantaged communities. And this looks like a really good project for this. So we at Yuba-Water hired GEI consultants to work with the state on this grant and work with Wheatland and OPUD and put together one unified application. Wheatland and OPUD had been working together to make sure everything was going to connect and everything was good, but now we have to put it together in one application. So one environmental document, one set of engineering documents. And so that's what we have been working on. The project really includes three parts. The connection between Wheatland, which, if you recall, Wheatland has its own wastewater treatment facilities, but they're nearing end of life. So instead of rebuilding that, they're connecting now with OPUD. And so that connection is the biggest chunk of work. The other two parts are a wastewater and a water line that goes down 40 Mile Road to really service the sports and entertainment zone and other areas. So we're really talking about that connection today. We're talking about the connection between Wheatland and OPUD. So we're still working with the state, and it seems like they're going well beyond the $10 million. This project now looks like it's nearing $100 million, and the state hasn't flinched yet. So they're saying, yeah, we think you might be eligible for the whole thing. Okay, so that's what we're working on. Now, as you can imagine, getting this application together has required a lot more significant more work from the environmental folks, from the engineers for both OPUD and for Wheatland. And that's the request that you have today. The request is for from Wheatland for 2.6 million in loan under the same terms of the original half grant, half loan. The idea there was that when development starts coming, both commercial and industrial and residential, it would be the development that would, the fees from the development that would pay back that loan. Same deal with OPUD. So Wheatland is requesting 2.6 million in loan funding, and OPUD is 1.55 in additional loan funding. Part of that funding for OPUD is there are some improvements to the wastewater treatment facilities at OPUD. We want to make sure that they're eligible to go into this grant before they actually spend that money. So that's the request today. I wanted to point out that the city manager for Wheatland, Jim Goodwin, is here today and their engineer. If you had any specific questions for them or for me.
Through the chair, do we have anybody from OPUD? You know, I think I kind of tried to stress that really when we get large grants, it'd be nice to have the Olivehurst, OPUD, and Wheatland here. I'm not gonna be a roadblock for it, but
I will take the blame on that one. I didn't really reach out to OPUD and tell them it was going to be on the agenda, and I know that OPUD has had. I know their general manager has been on vacation and they've had staff turnover. And so my bad on that one.
Through the chair, as a member of the pod committee, this was recommended unanimously, so I'll make the motion to approve.
You want to say anything?
Get a second.
Just before we do that, can we get a second real quick?
I would think that for 4.15 million total, that least they could do is show up.
I'll second.
Great, thank you.
Before Jim goes, kind of.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Director Vasquez, we totally understand your desire to have grantees or others that receive revenue from Yuba-Water Agency present when we grant that. Terry mentioned that she failed to notify OPUD, and I'd like to say that I would like to think that the partnership between Wheatland and OPUD is so strong, and I don't want to put words in Jim's mouth, that he's representing OPUD as he gets up here in the comments. How about that?
That is the best answer yet.
They would teach
And that is
the Hatfields.
That
and
is a
McCoys.
blessing, unbelievable.
They would teach the Hatfields and McCoys a few things.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for the consideration of our request this morning. As you all know, and as Terry did a great job summarizing the last couple of years, this started as a, run as fast as you can, design as fast as you can to get in the front of the line for money that may be there. And so it took a lot of courage and vision to start down that path, not knowing if we would get to where we want to be. And as Terry reported to you this morning, we actually are in that place that we hope to be, that there is money that was historically not available, that we have interest from the state in our project, and a very strong opportunity to succeed in securing, again, $100+ million to create this regional infrastructure in South Yuba County. And so, first of all, I just want to say thank you for the investments you've made, the commitment that the board made to reinvest in the county, and keeping that commitment, again, is appreciated by those of us that are working hard to make projects happen. So I want to say thank you for that. And again, any questions that you have about our project, I think, again, the character of the project that we've been designing so quickly and then discovering things that we could not have anticipated in our design really is where the escalation and the design costs have come from. So we are nearing the end. We want to get over the finish line, and we appreciate your consideration this morning.
Through the chair. You're becoming part of a team. So really what we'd like to see is the other part of the team show up and discuss a few things. I know it was approved unanimously by the pod committee, but I think the board needs to hear from Wheatland and OPUD. We know they're a mythical board somewhere, but we like to see them, especially when we're getting involved with so much money. So if we could do that, please, because I remember in 2009 when I was appointed, you had 3 particular routes for the bypass for Wheatland. I think you still have those 3. I'm not sure, but I would like for you to join the team.
Right.
We're putting money up.
Thank you. I'll be sure to share that with staff in my conversations.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Director Blazer. I just wanted to thank Terry for their presentation. Your style of presentation really helps me because you paint a very clear picture. It's nicely paced and I can just see it in my mind. So that helps a lot. So thank you.
Through the chair. I think there'll be more opportunities to bring a number of players to the podium. And it is the Yuba County's future. I'll tell you, this is really so exciting. When you think about the potential that can come out of this and what it can do for our county, the public, it's just huge. Now, I must admit, I'd like it working on fire, but that's okay. We're a large county with lots of issues, and we'll get to that eventually. And we're doing our part, what we can with the fire side. But this is, for every dollar we spend, you can see a return of $100. It's huge. So thanks for putting this together. Don't quit. Don't give up. Just keep pushing this fast as you can. Doing a great job.
Thank you.
So I have a few comments as well. So thank you to staff for all of your work on this. This is such a game changer for the city of Wheatland, for Yuba County, sports and entertainment zone, county as a whole. And I think it exemplifies the importance of teamwork and collaboration, right? Yuba Water Agency, Yuba County, City of Wheatland, OPUD, all working together on common goals. And success is very close. And it's very exciting. And so thank you. I want to thank Jim and Dane for being here today. Greatly appreciate that. And for your partnership with OPUD and with Yuba Water on this as well. So, and for your comments at the city council meeting the other night as well, recognizing Yuba Water Agency and our portion of this. So thank you. And is there any public comment on this item? Okay. I don't see any in the room, nor any online. So let's do a roll call vote on this.
Director Bradford?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes, with the caveat that I would like to see OPUD and Wheatland participate. And as a board, we work toward the betterment of Yuba County, and you're part of Yuba County, and we'd like to see you up here. So that's a yes.
Director Fletcher?
Yes.
Director Hasty?
Yes.
Director Blazer?
Yes.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. So next up is manager's report.
Well, we haven't had a meeting for a month, so this report is full. It's an extra few pages longer than normal, so I will ask that you go ahead and read a bunch of it. I'm going to give you the highlights to keep the report short, but there is a lot of detail here. First off, New Bullard's Bar is at 615,000 acre feet, which is 108% of normal year to date. We got to our September 30th end of season carryover. Things are going well. Colgate 1 and 2 are online per normal. Narrows 1 and 2 are both shut down. Narrows 2 is shut down for annual outage as planned. Narrows 1 shut down for a PG&E transmission outage. It was shut down yesterday morning and the team's bringing it back today. We're obviously still in drought conditions. There is a small chance of precipitation this weekend, mostly in the mountains and in the foothills, not likely in the valley. And then it warms back up next week. We're still in fire season. Remember that this is the time of year where you see north wind events. And even though it's a little colder in the mornings, it's a north wind event that drives these fires in October and November. So we will be on the lookout for that. Still in La Nina conditions, and it looks like those conditions will persist through this season. At least that's the forecast. We've got a new kind of realm we're in. John James participated in a virtual conference, but it was a conference he wasn't able to attend in person because of his busy schedule, not because I wouldn't let him travel or we wouldn't let him travel to Chile, but the conference was in Chile. And he attended virtually and gave his portion of the presentation at 5 a.m. It was the International Atmospheric River Conference, and it was regarding the agency's program related to atmospheric rivers in FIRO. So I wanted to just let you know we're going international with our participation in conferences. I'm boring. I just went to Grass Valley and the fairgrounds and attended Wade Crowfoot's California Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force meeting a few weeks ago and participated on a panel with Ellie Alano and other forest supervisors. Ellie's the forest supervisor of the Tahoe National Forest, and there's a few other forest supervisors there. And we were talking about specifically how we're using data to do forest treatment planning and prioritization. And my message was, and I said it jokingly, we can spend all this time and effort on these digital tools, and the teams that have worked on this, including our team, have done a great job. But the reality is do something somewhere. This goes back to Director Fletcher's point earlier. He wishes this money was all spent on fire. We're doing some work there. Doing something in the forest is better than sitting back and talking about the best thing we can do. But it went well. The conference was great. The strategic planning process. So we've had several meetings regarding the strategic planning process, and we had special board workshops on this various sections in the strategic plan. And Terry has a plan to roll this out, the draft out to you all. And if I could remember all the dates, I would just fire it off. But I'm going to go ahead and read this. We've incorporated the board's input along with input from managers and employees. We're now finishing up the draft plan, and the process is to send the plan next week to each of you, board members, so that you can take your time in reviewing the plan. And we're scheduling a board workshop for December 6th to review the proposed changes in the strategic plan. Then we'll come back to the board on December 20th for final approval. And when we release the draft plan to you all, we'll also release it to the public by putting it on our website, and we'll also send it to our employees for their additional input. So that's the plan for the strategic plan, to get it complete by the end of the year, which was our goal. Okay, I apologize, but some of these are so detailed, I'm going to have to read them. So human resources update. We're pleased to welcome our newest member of the team, Jessica Nichols. She starts in John's resource planning department as an environmental specialist. She began her employment with the agency last week, and she most recently worked as a project manager for Pacific State Marine Fisheries Commission, supporting the river management team and the Lower Yuba Accord. And prior to working for Pacific State, she spent 5 years with CDFW. She holds a BS in biology from California State University, San Marcos, she's currently working on her master's at Sac State. And the HR team and several other members of the agency have spent considerable time attending demos and evaluating various options for, and I reported on this in the past, a new human resource information system, HRIS. HR has made a recommendation to select NeoGov, N-E-O-G-O-V, for the agency human resource information system. The Yuba Water Agency HR team seeks a human resources information system that incorporates digitization of personal records, workflow automation, onboarding and offboarding, performance evaluation, tracking, and training management. Through automation, the agency seeks to both improve service and reduce wasted resources. Okay, there's two more paragraphs that I struck out, but in Teresa, I apologize if you're listening. It's to get to the modern era of HR. That's what we're doing. That's the bottom line, okay? Our HR team, along with Dee Dee and Jackie, partnered with Yuba County, Adventist Health, and other major employers in Yuba County to host a career fair at Peachtree Golf and Country Club. The goal of the event was to strengthen ties with Beale Air Force Base and highlight the great jobs we have that could appeal to military family members or people stationed at Beale who are near retirement. It was a great success and will likely become a recurring event. The agency received resumes from several qualified candidates for positions that range from administrative assistant to project manager. And the HR team has set health insurance open enrollment for agency employees and our retirees. Staff continues to respond to retirees' questions and information about open enrollment and the various health offerings through our new provider, Aqua JPIA. Communications and community relations. So in communications, YubaNet ran a story about the Yuba River cleanup, which included a nice shout out for our efforts and a great picture of our team out doing the cleanup. The Union in Grass Valley and the Appeal Democrat ran a story about the salmon expeditions and mentioned our funding of that trip for Yuba's fourth graders. John James was featured in Civil Engineering Magazine, a national magazine produced by this American Society of Civil Engineers, about FERO and the Ark Spillway and the increasing threat of larger, more frequent floods expected in the future. The Appeal featured our work with Trillia and Yuba County on the Hallwood North Training Wall and announced DWR's recent $9.7 million grant for the project. And the Appeal also featured a story about our forest health work and the unique nature of our blue forest and their forest resilience bonds. In community relations, it's been really busy. We held a screening of The Tricky Yuba for 50 people at Duke's Diner. We sponsored the Taste of Yuba-Sutter, hosted about 50 people on the Water Education Foundation's Northern California tour. We hosted a forum on forest health in the foothills, and I spoke about forest health at the Marysville Rotary Club last week as well. Over the weekend, we sponsored the Maker Fair at Yuba College. Yesterday, we provided a tour of Bullards and Colgate for 42 people attending the Clean Currents Conference, which is an NHA event happening this week. We're also a host sponsor of the conference, and looking ahead, we're sponsoring the Pinktober dinner at the Hard Rock on October 21st. One thing that didn't make the report that I will tell you, I had the commander of Beal and his senior staff out on a tour yesterday of Bullard's Bar and Colgate. We also had a couple senior staff members from WAPA, who's one of Beal's energy providers, and it was just a meet and greet to get to know each other and to show them our facilities. As far as I know, it's the first time we've had a Beal commander at our facilities in at least the recent past. Okay, that's it. Our next meetings are November 1st, which will include a regular board of directors meeting, an ABP meeting, a pod meeting, and a communications committee meeting. That's all I have.
Great, thank you. Any
There's more in
questions from the board?
I know it's long, but there's more in there.
Okay, seeing no questions, we'll go to director's reports. Director Vasquez.
I said what I had.
Director Blazer.
Just a brief update in Marysville on B Street, the hotel / restaurant / convention center. All these words have been thrown out. That's going to be developing on B Street, the old B Street property. Dutch Brothers, I don't know if they've broken ground yet, but they're going to be on B Street. Antonio's Quick Lunch is on B Street. The grocery outlet will be coming to B Street. The general plan that the city's working on is coming along. It's, I don't know, decades old. So that is going to be key to coming up with a plan for traffic flow through Marysville. Right now, there's just a lot of ideas thrown out there, just literally dozens on how to get traffic through Marysville. But the only legitimate way to approach it appears to be formalizing it in the general plan and then going from there. So people in the meantime, if it's short term, which I'm thinking less than 20 years, they're faced with a realization that traffic is coming and it's going to get bigger because Marysville's improving and just Costco, everything else, the traffic's just going to increase. So 20 years or less, they're just realizing the traffic's going to increase. If it's beyond 20 years, there may be something that comes out of the general plan and SACOG and Caltrans. So that's kind of where they are. Traffic is just going to get busier and they're just learning how to deal with it. That's it.
Director Fletcher.
So Adam, one of the things I forgot to mention was please consider being active with NACO. We don't go to Chile. It's all in the United States. So a great opportunity to actually move one step farther. The second vice chair is from California now. First vice chair, and opportunities abound. So hopefully in the budget, consider going to NACO meetings for the next few years. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. Couple things. One, I want to thank Terry again for the Wheatland project. I think that one of the major skills that Yuba Water Agency has is we are able to funnel money, small amounts of money, which seem big, but then turn into huge amounts of investment within Yuba County. I think we see that in Wheatland, we see that in forest management, we saw that in the Costco. Look around and see the money that we funnel is making a huge difference in Yuba County. And I just want to thank the team. I mean, it's really just a fantastic team. I did want to report that Willie and I did have lunch with Carla Namath, the director of DWR. It was just a fantastic lunch, went well over time. I mean, it went from, that we had planned. And I think that Willie did a great job of working to make sure that our partnership with DWR, it's very good now, but it's even going to get better. And I just want to thank him for that time that he spent, because I think it's going to make a big difference in the future as we work with them. And they were asking us to basically be the model for helping them because of what we do. And so I just want to thank Willie for that, and looking forward to the partnership as it deepens in the future.
Thank you. Yesterday, DWR hosted a drought to flood symposium, and they really talked about building resilience for California's climate extremes, really focused on the fact that our wet periods are going to be wetter and our dry periods are going to be drier. There's probably going to be bigger swings than there are now, and California is already known for big swings. There's no such thing as an average year in California typically, and that's going to be less so moving forward. And so it was a very informative event, discussed a lot of things that we're working on here at the agency. So we're very much aligned with what's going on in the world of both flood protection and water supply reliability. And John James was on a panel there talking about FURO, and he did a great job. And I saw Adam there as well. So anyway, that's it. So with that, unless there's additional comments from staff, okay, we will take a 5-minute recess. Then we have a closed session as listed on the agenda, followed by a special meeting at 10:30 at the agency office. So thank you.
Recording stopped.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com. Skip's Marysville Music Cafe, with lessons, in person and personalized. Instruments including guitars and amps, horns, strings for instruments, and a myriad of music and sound equipment. Skip's Marysville Music Cafe.